Is it a planner, a sketchbook, a place for lists, ideas, art, motivation? What exactly is a bullet journal and how do you start one? If you've been wondering this, you've come to the right place for the quick and ultimate crash course. By the end of this video, you'll know all you need to know to start your very own bullet journal. From the common terms, supplies used, and page setups, all the way to most asked questions and the right mentality to make it a great system for you. Hi, it's Ioana. I make videos to help you be organized, productive, and creative, and most of all, I've been using a bullet journal to stay on top of everything for the past 6 years. I'm now a 20-year-old university business student, and while the spreads I'll show you are my personal take on bullet journaling at the moment, I'll share all the things I've learned along the way as well. If you're new to my channel, Mistral Spirit, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications bell for weekly videos like this one. If you find this video helpful, please like and leave a comment to let me know. It's the best way to support my channel. So here's the elevator pitch. The bullet journal is an organization system ideated by Ryder Carroll and started as a Kickstarter campaign in 2014. Their now popular website, bulletjournal.com, has the phrase, "the analog method for the digital age," right on the front page, and it's an excellent description. Here are the 7 notebooks I've been through in the past 6 years using the bullet journal system. The idea is that you can only remember so many things at a time. We're obviously not the best at multitasking because it lowers our productivity. But also, if you try to remember too many things at once, it can get overwhelming, which is why you would keep it all in a handy notebook. You can decide exactly which parts of your life to keep in the notebook, but because it's such a well-used system, there are bullet journaling spread ideas for nearly any purpose today. This is exactly the reason why it can be confusing. Everyone tweaks the system slightly to fit their needs, and I encourage you to think about this as you watch this video. There is no correct or perfect way to bullet journal, just like there's no perfect way to plan your day, stick to your habits, or organize your finances. Let's start with the system, and we'll get back to the materials you need. But first, there are a few words I'll be using that might be confusing if you've never heard them before. A bullet journal, or a bujo, often refers to the notebook itself, which can be misleading sometimes because the notebook you choose doesn't really matter. A spread is generally a page or a pair of pages in the notebook. For example, this is a spread with some of my dailies. One type of spread that's important is a collection. It's basically a list that breaks the chronological pattern of your bullet journal. This is because sometimes it's helpful to dedicate an entire page, or a collection, to a single category of information. It's easier to find later, and you don't split the same topic into multiple pages scattered throughout the journal, which can happen if you keep things chronologically, like you would in a bullet journal. A tracker is a shortened version of saying any kind of method of keeping track of when you did some specific steps towards your goals or habits. These can be tracker spreads, which span an entire page, or spread, or they can be just trackers tucked away into a corner of a page, and we'll talk about these soon. The words monthlies, weeklies, and dailies are just shorthand, cute form for monthly layout, weekly layout, and daily layout. These can take different forms for different people. So let's start with the system. The very basic principle centers around chronological order and the bullet system. A bullet journal is like an archive of your life, and to make things easy to find and access, it's chronological. Imagine looking back at old photos. It's easy to find them because you can remember the general month that you did something, then narrow it down by effectively alphabetizing any surrounding photos you see. This happened before that, and so on. Your dailies are the same deal. You start with a date at the top of the page, and now you've got your first daily. That's all it takes. As the day goes on, you take notes from the day. When the day's over, you write tomorrow's date right below. The idea is that you don't lay these out ahead of time because you never know how much space you'll need each day. What about those notes? So first, they're shorthand, but they also use specific symbols, which is where the bullet system comes in. Ryder Carroll uses the following system. First, he has tasks. These are things to do that you write down to remember throughout the day or at the start of the day if that's part of your morning routine. When he's done, he puts an X through the dot. If it becomes irrelevant, he strikes it out, which is like erasing it, except he's using a pen. If he chooses to schedule the task for later, he puts it into his future log and signals that by putting a backwards arrow. A forward arrow is if he migrates or rewrites it into a collection, like for example, article topics to write about. Then he has notes, which are little lines or dashes, and finally he's got events, which are small circles. Here's my system. My tasks are small task boxes or check boxes, and when I'm finished, I fill them in. If I've decided they're irrelevant, I will also strike them out. However, if I don't get to something on the day it's written, I save time by simply putting a forward arrow to the left of the checkbox, and then I can look back and still fill in any unfilled boxes from previous days. If I, however, finish the page and have to start new dailies in a new spread, so I have to flip the page, I'll put an X through the box and just rewrite the entire task. So now it has an X and an arrow. If the task is a really big, crazy thing that I want to move to a long-term list I've made elsewhere, I'll put a diagonal arrow pointing towards the top right in the box. Notes for me are just little dots, and I don't track events because those are in my Google Calendar already. Oh, and there are also signifiers. These are things like exclamation points, or in my case, pink or blue numbers representing the priority order of the tasks that I have to do. That's usually used on particularly busy days. When you put all this together, you've got a continuous, easy to stick to process of planning, tracking, and then looking back on your day's accomplishments. Of course, you'll want to have some things that you write down that aren't chronological. It'll make it easier to organize if they're in one central collection. On a page, you can bookmark with washi tape or write in your index at the start of the notebook. You can also use this fun hack and color in a semicircle on the edge, and that way when you hold your notebook up, you'll see all the semicircles as little lines. These collections can be things you want to make lists about. Morning routine planning, workout exercises, cool things to learn someday, 5-year goals, habit planning, and so on. I have a video with a whole list of collection spread ideas coming soon, so I'll link it in the description for you to see when it's ready. And last but not least, you'll need some method of planning ahead. First, you've got events to go to, places you need to be. For this, the bullet journal system uses a monthly calendar of some kind. These can take the forms of simply the days of the month, one per line, with room on the line to fill in your commitments as they arise. Or they can take the form of a visual calendar that looks much like an app on your phone or computer. In my case, I actually keep track of events on Google Calendar, and you can watch my video on that, because then I get reminders and can plan much farther ahead. Because I'm a student, however, I have assignment deadlines, which I do not want to get constant reminders for on Google Calendar. So my monthly bullet journal calendar contains these deadlines as colored dots, and all the textbook readings that I'll need to do each month in advance of classes as task boxes. When it comes to planning even farther ahead than 1 month, the bullet journal has you covered too. Writer Carol advocates for a future log, which is practically a page segmented into months of the year. And if it's currently May, for example, and you want to plan something for September, you simply write it in the September box. And just remember to check back again at the start of each month so that you can see what you left for yourself in this month's box to remember. In my case, I plan far ahead with Google Calendar or by creating vague collections like projects to start someday or fun things to do this year. For my schoolwork, I sit down once a month to go over what I'll need to do. Once again, the main idea with bullet journaling is being chronological. You write things down as they pop into your head, and if there's nowhere logical for you to write it down, you create a new page or a layout for those ideas. Here's an example. So say I'm going about my day and I have a coffee chat with a friend about fitness goals. We are sketching at the same time in our notebooks, and after that, I decide that I want to start going to the gym. This takes some planning, so I make a little plan for it. I've started a new page because I assume it'll take some mind mapping. Then I decide that what I need is a way to simply track my gym habit. Do I want to do this for an entire month or just for this week? I decide to do it at the start of every week of dailies in my bullet journal, and finding one that I like on Pinterest or Instagram, I draw it into my bullet journal. That's pretty much the kind of system that you might encounter and the way you might make a system in your bullet journal. Now that we've covered the system, what do you actually need to start bullet journaling? First, you'll need a notebook. I'll list all my personal favorite supplies in the description, but for a notebook, you should first think about whether you want one that's dotted, lined, or blank. People love using dotted for this because it's really versatile. It lends itself well to mind mapping and drawing, but it also has visible lines to write. Totally up to you though. My first bullet journals were lined. Choose a notebook with a nice cover as well. It's essentially a notebook that will be your life buddy and assistant, so you'll want something that matches your personal brand. Consider the page quality and the weight as well as the color. Some brands have ivory pages and others have bright white pages. Some have thick pages that can stand watercolor illustrations, while others have thinner and more delicate feeling to the pages. Also note whether you want one, many, or no ribbons to help you mark your page. If you don't have one though, don't worry. You can always tab your pages easily like I mentioned with washi tape, or with the semicircle coloring method. Next, you'll need a pen. My favorite pens for bullet journaling never smudge. You'll be writing all over the page, so pens that easily smudge can be pretty inconvenient. Also pay attention to a pen that your chosen notebook pages can hold without bleeding. And finally, consider whether you plan to be highlighting or decorating your text, in which case you might want to look into either archival ink like Faber-Castell or Micron, it's also called India ink, or a simple ballpoint pen. If you want to get decorative in your bullet journal, go ahead. I love to do this from time to time when I have the time to do it, and it makes sense because I'm not always carrying around a sketchbook. but I'm always carrying around my bullet journal. You can use watercolors or pencil crayons or even colored markers to spice it up. Some artists create scrapbook type layouts with washi tape and stickers, and if you want, sticky notes on the corners of the pages is one of my favorite ways to jazz up a spread when I'm busy but still want something nice to look at. We've gone over the basics here, but I encourage you to explore more. I've got tons of videos on my channel and posts on my blog and Instagram account with more ideas and strategies. You can also use your bullet journal to keep a log of your key accomplishments of the year, to plan your meals, to make schedules for the day in a calendar blocking system, or to track your fitness goals. As I mentioned, there are so many spreads out there to do whatever you want in your bullet journal, so take a look at those. To wrap things up, I'm going to flip through my most recent bullet journal, which I started this May 1st, 2020. And I'm going to answer 3 most commonly asked questions. While I do that, you'll see what spreads I generally use when setting up a new bullet journal. And take note, you can start a new one absolutely whenever, even right in the middle of the year or May 1st as I did. Okay, here are the questions. One common question is, how do you find the motivation and time to keep up with it? So a bullet journal can take a lot more time than a planner because you're drawing up the spreads yourself. But if you go the minimalist route, which I usually do when I'm in school, it can take much less time. It's completely up to you, and please don't feel any kind of pressure to make it look any way. You can also switch halfway through. Next, is it really practical to carry around a notebook with you everywhere? As a student, it is because I carry a backpack anyways, and it also fits into my favorite purse. But if I don't have my bullet journal on hand, I can just write things in my phone notes or email ideas to myself and then transfer them in later. That's what I usually do. And finally, how do you avoid rewriting things between dailies or between dailies and monthly spreads? As I mentioned, my system includes a task box and an arrow next to it, so that way I can have dailies with empty boxes that I know I still need to complete days ahead. And that's it. The most important thing is for your organization systems to work for you, not the other way around. So before you start with decorations and art, this is just a little final reminder to investigate the functionality behind the method that you are using to keep organized and on top of life. If you found this video helpful at all, please also do give it a thumbs up, as it lets me know what type of videos to make. And subscribe for a new video on lifestyle, organization, and creativity every week. Also, I'll answer any questions you have in the comments, so feel free to ask away. Once again, I'm Iwana, and you're watching Mistral Spirit. You can find me on Instagram, on my blog, and on YouTube. And I'm also super excited to have just announced this week that my shop for fine art prints and journal printables is launching June 1st, 2020. So you'll be able to find me there soon too. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Happy journaling!